In this episode of NBA Sports Talk tonight, we're going to be talking about 5 reasons how the lack of NBA veteran leadership on NBA teams is hurting the league. We're going to be talking about that and more coming up on NBA Sports Talk now. Praise the Lord, everyone. Welcome to NBA Sports Talk, where we talk NBA sports and more from a fan's perspective. And if you're joining us this evening here on NBA Sports Talk, let us know in the chat of YouTube or LinkedIn tonight where you're watching us from. And if you're watching the replay, the video podcast of this replay, give us a hashtag Team Replay in the comment section of either YouTube or LinkedIn. And as we said in our opening, we're going to be talking about 5 reasons why I believe the lack of NBA veteran leadership is hurting the league as a whole. It's a topic that's not really discussed all that often based on the landscape of the NBA, of what we see, especially right now while we're in the off season, as teams are starting to put their teams together and ready for the 2023-2024 season. We want to get into this topic and find out, why is there such a void, a lack of NBA veterans and leadership in the league? So let's get started with this discussion. All right, let me fire up my stream deck. There we go. NBA veteran leadership. And I had to use Udonis Haslem as our case study here, because he just recently announced last year that the 2022-2023 season was his final year in him retiring and being with the Miami Heat. And so he is now gone. And so it brings up an interesting discussion, not just for the Miami Heat, but for the league as a whole. So let's get started here. Okay, there we go. All right, let's look at, first of all, the current makeup of the league right now, in which it is. As we know, there's over 30 NBA teams, 5 of each 3 of the divisions for the Eastern Conference and 3 for each of the Western Conference. But I want to bring some data to you. Of these 30 teams I looked at, 18 of them are very young rosters. They're very young rosters, averaging between the age of 23 to 25, and very few players on this team are over 30. Over 30. Keep that in mind. Now, the other 12 teams, again, have a mixture of an age between 23 and 25, but they have players that are over 30, at least 12 of them. If you drill down further, of these 30 teams, only 6 of them really have true veteran leaders or players who've been playing in the league for a very long time. For example, with the recent rise of the Sacramento Kings and Mike Brown taking over as head coach, and the Kings end up having one of their best season in years and making it to the second round playoffs. One of the key veterans on that team, though we didn't see him playing all that much in the NBA playoffs because the Sacramento Kings being on the West Coast, but you didn't really see it in the series that they were playing with the Warriors, was Matthew Dellavedova, formerly of the Cleveland Cavaliers, who won an NBA championship with LeBron James when they beat the Golden State Warriors when they went 73-9. that Matthew Dellavedova, who then ended up going to Milwaukee and signing as a free agent and getting a large contract, and has just basically been traveling throughout the league. But he was one of their primary veterans there. Another example is Thaddeus Young, who is on the Toronto Raptors, who was another veteran leader who's been in the league throughout over a decade. And then you have the recent retired Udonis Haslem, who was with the Miami Heat basically all his career. We're going to get more into him later. That's just a few examples of NBA veterans. But what I'm finding interesting in the current makeup, the league is comprised more of young stars and young players on their rosters, like such as the Detroit Pistons, Cade Cunningham, and their recent individuals that they have on their team. You look at the New York Knicks, who are starting to turn things around. They have Evan Fournier, but they're looking to trade him possibly before the season starts. So you have individuals from an age standpoint in their 30s or in their mid 30s, but you don't have a real true veteran. That's pretty much the current makeup of the team. Now, just recently, the Memphis Grizzlies traded and got Marcus Smart, and they also signed Derrick Rose because before signing Derrick Rose and Marcus Smart, they had Steven Adams. But it begs the question: just because you have an NBA vet on your team, are they truly the real person, or are they the right fit for the make of that team so that they can help that team end up being successful in the goals that they're looking to accomplish? So that's the current makeup. Now let's look at in terms of why is there such a lack of veteran leadership, and how is it hurting the league? One, in terms of, I believe, because it's viewed, unfortunately, by most players or some players, but I would dare say most players, based upon how the team has things structured and set up. It's not a very desired role to be a part of, especially when you're offering certain things like the veteran minimum. You're telling veterans who are going to be on your team, you're not really offering a whole lot to pay them, and in some cases you're not guaranteeing them a sizable amount of money for more than 1 year, and so it becomes an undesired role. On top of that, playing time, especially if a player still feels like that they can contribute, be a part of a competitive or championship team, they may not want to become a part of that team and sign that veteran minimum because the lack of playing time, not having clear understanding what they're how they are going to be a part of the team and their team, the role that they will be playing on the team, even though they are a vet on it. And then also in terms, as we said, non-guaranteed salaries, and as a result, short-term contract. These are just a few reasons why NBA vets, unfortunately, are not seen and are in the forefront and being a part of teams that are being competitive, and that's being in the playoffs. So you look at those two things, and it points to and it shows us why the league has an issue as a result of not having NBA vets. I think about before Donovan Mitchell left Utah to go Cleveland, and Rudy Gobert left to go to Minnesota, of being traded after Danny Ainge got there as the general manager. Teams of the past that had veteran leadership and had someone like a Sam Mitchell, let's say someone that had a Dale Davis, a Charles Oakley, they would be able to set those two players down and to say, whatever differences you have here, we're going to work them out for the betterment of the team. But because there was no NBA veteran leadership there or leader there, a key person there who could be a stopgap between management and the coach and the players. There was no one there, and as a result, Utah ended up trading Donovan Mitchell. Utah ended up trading Rudy Gobert, and as a result, the lack of leadership is manifested through teams, unfortunately, and players not being able to coexist together. Now, I didn't say you had to like the player. I didn't say you had to get along with the player, but I'm saying coexisting with the player. These are just two reasons why I believe the lack of NBA veteran leadership is hurting the league. Do me a favor. If you're just joining us, we're talking about 5 reasons on how the lack of NBA veteran leadership is hurting the league as a whole. So if you're just joining us on either on YouTube or LinkedIn, give us a hashtag Team Live. Let us know where you're watching us from. And if you're watching the replay, give us a hashtag Team Replay in the comments. Oh, yeah. Click that thumbs up button. Hit that like button on YouTube. Hit that thumbs up or like button on LinkedIn and share this on the platform you're watching us on, either LinkedIn or YouTube. Let's go deeper. Let's go deeper in this episode of NBA veteran leadership, the lack of it, of how it's hurting the league. No veteran players. No veteran players. And so when you don't have no veteran player, a veteran player like a Matthew Dellavedova, if you don't have like a Udonis Haslem, who's left now. Now let's take Miami as an example. Right now, there is the discussion that the possibility of the Miami Heat looking to maybe land Damian Lillard from the Portland Trailblazers, and then him coming over to the Heat, and then putting a package together of Tyler Hero, maybe Kyle Lowry, who's in his 30s, Kevin Love, who's in his 30s. If they make that trade along with some picks and everything, then basically you don't have a veteran leader who can then replace Udonis Haslem, who is since retired. Now, if that's the case for the Miami Heat, let's look at teams like the Thunder. Let's look at the teams like the Knicks. Let's look at the teams like the Pistons. Let's look at the teams like the Timberwolves. Let's look at teams that are young and up and coming, but they don't have an NBA vet. One example of a team that does have an NBA vet, which we'll come back to, is the Cleveland Cavaliers. But just naming a few. And so if you don't have an NBA vet or veterans on your team, then your opportunity to build team culture becomes harder. It becomes more difficult, and it's more now laid upon the coach and the coaching staff. With no NBA vets there, then it's harder to build chemistry. Chemistry, along with no chemistry, is poor communication. Players not communicating with one another. I mean, really communicating with one another. There's no accountability, and there is, unfortunately, no team identity. This, unfortunately, is what we're seeing throughout the league. We're seeing star players. We're seeing star players on teams being stars, but we're not seeing enough teams. We're not seeing enough teams that are being able to play competitive NBA basketball and to be able to grow as a team. When you look at the handful of teams that we're seeing, let's take the 76ers. You're hearing about James Harden, who opted back into his contract, but now he wants to be traded possibly to the Clippers. And Joel Embiid, who just went through a whole issue with Ben Simmons, who's been since traded to the Nets, now you have James Harden. and you have others like Tobias Harris, Therese Maxey, PJ Tucker. So the question then becomes, how do you get all parties playing on the same team, all on the same page? You know, PJ Tucker is a vet there, but is he playing the role of mediator as well? But at the same time, trying to have, him being on there, having a decent salary, and him being competitive and contributing to the team. Opposite of the 76ers, you look at the recent success that the Cleveland Cavaliers had with Donovan Mitchell being there, and the rest of Jared Allen and the rest of that team squad. It was interesting that you had players like Danny Green there, who has been in the league for quite a while, who actually got drafted by the Cavaliers when he was, you know, came into the league from being a senior with the North Carolina Tar Heels, won a championship, and he's been fortunate enough to win a championship in the league with the Spurs and with the Raptors and with the Lakers. So he brings a lot of team veteran leadership and experience that will help a young team so that they can have team culture, so that they can have chemistry, so that they can have communication, so that he can be able to share with them the importance of accountability with their team. And so the lack of veteran leadership is hurting the league throughout the NBA. All right. We touched on it earlier, but let's touch on veteran minimums. Well, if you're trying to get vets to provide leadership on young team to help young teams like such as a Houston Rockets, they just recently hired a new coach in Ime Udoka. They just signed Fred VanVleet. But before then, they only had individuals like Aaron Gordon and DJ Augustine and a bunch of young players there. And Steven Silas at the time was the coach. But if you're trying to bring vets there, I believe the league, ownership, and teams have to address the veteran minimum. The league has to address it. Not only the league in the NBA 30 teams, but the Players Association have to make this a bigger issue for their players, as well as younger stars such as a John Morant being willing to be held accountable. You think about all of what John Morant has been through this past year, with now him going on his second suspension of him brandishing a firearm on social media of Instagram. Now, Steven Adams is there, but is he truly the right veteran leader that can really, and being a center and John Morant being a combo guard, either a point or a shooting, is he truly the right veteran leader who can really speak? I believe the answer was no. And I think this is the reason why Memphis ended up making the decision now to trade key players, to bring back players like Marcus Smart from the Boston Celtics, who is a former Defensive Player of the Year and who was a very important piece of of Boston's chemistry and culture and identity, and what he can bring to the Memphis Grizzlies to take the next step. And on top of that, having Derrick Rose. But it can't just be the Memphis Grizzlies. We need to see this on the New York Knicks. We need to see this with the Brooklyn Nets. We need to see this with the Indiana Pacers. We need to see this with the Detroit Pistons. We need to see this with the Orlando Magic. We need to see this with the Washington Wizards. And I can go on even with teams in the Western Conference. We need to see more veteran leaders on NBA teams that will hold a John Morant accountable, and he's willing to listen. And I believe a person like Derrick Rose, he'll listen to. He'll listen to Derrick Rose, possibly. He'll listen to a Marcus Smart, possibly. We need to see more NBA veteran leaders that will help and deal with the issue of what we see that's going on in the league. Hey, do me a favor. If you're just joining us, let us know in the chat of YouTube or LinkedIn where you're watching us from. Give us a hashtag Team Live. Click that thumbs up button for me. Share this on your favorite social media platform. And if you are new to NBA Sports Talk, where we talk NBA sports and more from a fan's perspective, we want you to join the conversation in the live chat and also subscribe to the channel and click the alert notification button. Let me jump right over here to the chat. See my good man, Mr. James Bush, who is in the house. Good evening, sir. Just tuning in, having you already covered Memphis yet. Yes, yeah, definitely covered Memphis, and primarily what we saw this past year going on with the Memphis Grizzly team and with John Morant. And I believe this is the reason why. This is the reason why I believe Memphis made the decision to bring in players like Marcus Smart, former Defensive Player of the Year with the Boston Celtics, who played a key part in helping to strengthen Boston's culture, team culture, chemistry, and identity. And I believe he can then now bring that to Memphis. And then you add Derrick Rose. You add Derrick Rose, a former MVP who's been throughout the league, who played with Memphis college team and was drafted to the Chicago Bulls. So he knows, he has a story, a message I believe he can communicate to a John Morant of being one of the youngest players to win an MVP. So definitely Memphis is a team that definitely needs to benefit from team vets such as that Memphis has on the team. All right. And so we've covered Memphis. We've talked about, other team vets, but just recently, with this last year, Udonis Haslem has now retired. And we touched on, his contributions as, being a Miami Heat who was an undrafted player who ended up playing with Miami all his life. But it was once, stated when someone asked Eric Spoelstra, how do you define Udonis Haslem? You define him as Miami Heat team culture, Miami Heat team chemistry, who helps to cause players to want to be held accountable. I remember that exchange that Eric Spoelstra and Jimmy Butler had a couple of years ago, but who do you see in between them? You see Udonis Haslem. Udonis Haslem has been fortunate to be a 4-time NBA champion. He's been in a part of 7 NBA finals. And so now with his retirement, the question now comes, how does Miami fill that gap? Now they have Kyle Lowry. They have Kevin Love, former NBA champions. The question, however, is if Damian Lillard is traded from Portland to Miami, could those individuals, along with Tyler Hero and other picks, be included in that package? And if that happens, then even the Miami Heat now has to search and look for a type of NBA vet who would be willing to come to the team and embrace the Miami Heat culture. Udonis was there for, the last couple of years. They said he was on the team, but he wasn't even playing very few games. But he was there to be able to speak and deal with the young guys like Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, Duncan Robinson, and others. And so having an NBA vet on your team is so critical because if the NBA doesn't take this serious, and I have my concerns, I have my doubts if they are, because when they had the in-season tournament announcement in Las Vegas, for the exception of Steve Kerr, who did you see making the announcements of the tournament and the groupings of the teams? You seen individuals like Cade Cunningham, you seen a top rookie from the Orlando Magic, you seen other young stars, and I understand the NBA wants to promote their young stars, not just today but tomorrow, but they had no NBA veteran leaders representing that group that was helping to promote the in-season tournament. And so this is something we are definitely going to keep watching throughout the off season and into the new season as they start. James says, "Oh yeah, Orlando, Charlotte could really use veteran leadership. Definitely, definitely. I mean, you look at how long Charlotte has been trying to put a team together that can be competitive, that can make a run at the playoffs. Okay. They got the ball. I'm trying to think. LaMelo Ball. They had LaMelo Ball there. Okay. But and you have Gordon Hayward, who's there. But Gordon Hayward, it's like it's interesting when you see some of these NBA vets on this team, depending on how the team is structured and made up and the roles that they're playing, there are individuals like a Gordon Hayward who's basically still trying to play in the league and still get his minutes and still get paid. You can't blame the guy. You can't blame a guy like an Eric Gordon. You can't blame guys like this. But at the same time, where are the Udonis Haslams? Where are the Thaddeus Youngs? Where are the Matthew Dellavedovas on the Sacramento Kings? Hey, want to give a good shout out to my man Paul Andre DeVere, who's watching us on LinkedIn. Yes, sir. Warriors. You know, definitely as good as and you know what, the Warriors. What happens now when one of you the key NBA veterans of a team that's been a part of a championship run like a Draymond Green now ends up having an issue with a younger player like Jordan Poole? Look how that situation caused Golden State never to fully be on the same page and knocked them off their championship course. Look how it made things much harder. Even Draymond Green even had to admit it. Steve Kerr even had to admit that the Warriors unfortunately had maxed themselves out, where it was definitely time to retool and remake that team. And that's the reason why I love the Chris Paul trade. You know, you hear people say, well, he doesn't really fit the Golden State Warriors style. This guy's an NBA veteran who's been in the league for close over 15 years. He will find a way to contribute. The Warriors have not had a good backup veteran point guard since Leandro DeBosa and guys like Sean Livingston. To have a Chris Paul now? Oh man. Whoo. Paul says, yes, Golden State all day. Golden State all day. He goes on. Yeah, money green. Yes, Draymond definitely got his money. But Draymond, you know, that incident with Draymond, I think it really, you know, Golden State definitely showed that they wanted to bring Draymond back, but I'm hoping that he really gets things back right and keeps that competitive fire in check, because he made me when I saw that incident jump off, he made me think of how Dennis Rodman used to act on the San Antonio Spurs with David Robinson. And though Dennis Rodman never threw a punch at anyone, but just his attitude and his behavior was unfortunately detrimental to the team. And so Draymond definitely has some repairing and some rebuilding to do as one of the team leaders on that team. You know, when it's all said and done, it's Steph Curry. He's the true leader of that team. But you can put so much on a star like Steph, and I believe this is the reason why now Chris Paul becomes so important. Hey, we're talking about 5 reasons why there is such a lack of NBA veteran players in the league, and it's hurting. Before we wrap this up, I want to touch on the recent, unfortunately, firing of Mark Jackson. ESPN ended up firing him. Some reports said he was laid off. Other reports, for the most part, have been saying that he was fired. But before being fired, he was offered the opportunity to stay with the ESPN NBA announced team, but being on with how it was reported as the B team with Stephen Jones, who was originally calling games with Doris Burke, but she got um, elevated to now with Mike Breen. You're bringing in Doc Rivers, and they were going to have Mark Jackson, and he basically said no. He just said no. I'm not willing to take that. And as I thought about that, and I said, here's the man who's been with the NBA as an NBA analyst with ESPN for over 10 years, and his willingness to say no and to be willing to accept the consequences. And I said, him being of a man of principle, it helped me to understand, you know, looking at how there are coaches that are getting a second chance to coach. Coaches who are getting a second chance, like, for example, Billy Donovan, who came from the University of Florida, did a pretty good okay job with the Oklahoma City Thunder. He gets another chance with the Chicago Bulls. But Mark Jackson doesn't get a call from the Bulls. You have Tom Thibodeau, who's coached with the Bulls, who's coached with the Timberwolves, and now he's with the Knicks. But he doesn't get an opportunity with the New York Knicks. You look at the firing of Mike Budenholzer, and you look, and Adrian Griffin gets an opportunity, but Mark Jackson doesn't. It as much as I love Steve Kerr and the Golden State Warriors, you have to admit the foundation and everything that was put in place for the Golden State Warriors, Mark Jackson played a major role in that. But this man has not been given an opportunity to coach. But you still see other individuals getting opportunities to coach, but yet Mark Jackson has yet to be given one. And so when they then gave him that ultimatum that he had to be a part of the B team, he said no. And I don't blame him. And I know he's going to land on his feet. I am hoping Turner Sports definitely scoops him up. Scoop him up and Jeff Van Gundy up. But I'm saddened at the same time to see the end of a great trio of announcers of Mike Breen, bang, Mark Jackson, mama, there goes that man, Jeff Van Gundy, the way he is. To see that trio now come to an end, it made me think of trios such as Howard Cosell, Frank Gifford, and Don Meredith. It made me think of trios like, or duos like Mike Greenberg and Mike Golick. It made me think of trios that have been a part of our sports uh lives as fans and what they've contributed, and now to see that now come to an end. So I definitely had to touch on that. Want to definitely get your guys' thoughts. Let me just jump down here to the chat. Paul says Mark Jackson. Yes. Oh, his Mark Jackson was my neighbor when he was coaching for GSW. Oh man, let me tell you something. Definitely, definitely. James says ESPN karma is just around the corner. Oh yes, watch your back. It's just around the corner. It's just around the corner. And you know, seeing, individuals like Jalen Rose, regardless of what your feelings or thoughts is about Jalen Rose, Max Kellerman, like I said, now Jeff Van Gundy, Mark Jackson, ESPN is definitely as of what we knew they once were. Definitely things are not right over there. They're not over there. And again, to want to bring in a Doc Rivers, I just don't understand that. I don't. And then you want to bring in someone like a Pat McAfee. Now, at one minute, Disney is saying that we need to do all these layoffs. We need to cut all of these big salaries from these radio and TV personalities, Keyshawn Johnson, Max Kellerman. But now you're bringing in a Pat McAfee, paying him all this money. Okay, we're getting off topic. We're getting off topic, but I definitely wanted to make that point. Definitely want to make that point, and just definitely, I'm going to miss that trio of Mark Jackson, Jeff Van Gundy, and Mike Breen, and it makes me wonder how much longer is he going to be there? How much longer will we see Mike Breen there? How much longer? Damn. Uh, didn't know about the breakup. No, yeah, man. It's just that trio of so many games we watched, primetime games on Saturday, prime games on Sunday evening, uh games on a Friday night, games for the playoffs, and then NBA finals. ESPN definitely there's some issues there. There's some issues there. There's definitely some issues. And I haven't heard anything. Now it makes me wonder now why Stephen A. Smith has his own podcast. Why he now has his own podcast that now basically where he can basically stand on his own, because he even said a couple of weeks ago that if these layoffs continue, even he wouldn't be safe. Even he wouldn't. That came from his mouth. That came from his mouth. In these uncharted economic times that we're living in, Disney making these types of decisions and it trickling down on ESPN, you never know. You never know. So we wanted to touch on that, but definitely want to get your thoughts on the lack of NBA veteran leadership. Definitely leave us your thoughts either in the live chat or in the comment section, and also the parting of Mark Jackson. And so with that said, we're going to go ahead and bring this train into the station. I want to thank James. I want to thank Paul for joining me over on LinkedIn. And if you are watching the replay up to this point, I want to thank every replay viewer watching. Again, we want to encourage you to subscribe to the new NBA Sports Talk YouTube channel. Click that alert notification button and join the conversation, even in the live chat or the comments section. And so we will be back Sunday night at 8 p.m. as we continue to talk NBA sports from your perspective, the fans' perspective, and more. Until then, have a good night.